If you follow Alex Clark on YouTube, then you know that he has some hilarious animated stories. You may also know that he recently completed a US comedy tour, but what you may not know is that he also commissioned yours truly to do the poster artwork. Greetings, people of the internet. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. Welcome, mad creators, to the underground laboratory where we create robots, alien zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. And every now and again, we may get a request from, say, a rather popular YouTube artist who may be in need of, say, a poster design or something like that. That was the case with Alex Clark, who recently reached out to me because he was about to embark on his US comedy tour and he needed some poster artwork. And I guess he liked my style because he wanted to commission me to do his tour poster. This was a really cool opportunity because it gave me a chance to sort of use my own style, but also work with somebody else's style. Because if you've seen Alex's stuff, and if you haven't, what's going on? Are you living under a rock? I mean, if you're watching my channel, you're not familiar with his, yeah, there's got to be something wrong there. But if you aren't, definitely go check him out because he could use the subs, because I think he's only like at 4 million or something like that, a little over 4 million. So help a guy out, all right? So Alex contacted me, we worked a little bit back and forth, and we came up with this poster design. But I thought it'd be cool to kind of show you how this whole process came to be. Some of the sketches that were kind of thrown out, some of the ideas that we bantered back and forth, and how this final piece came together. So yeah, let's check that out. Here we are in the command center of the underground layer where I do all of my digital work. Now, the first step I do with every project I work on is to do a bit of a brainstorming session and explore what the different directions we might go in, what's best for the project. In this case, Alex, who is also an artist and an animator, had a lot of great creative input already. So talking with Alex, it was clear that he wanted to see the cartoon version of himself that you see in his videos, but sort of done in my style. Now, this is a little bit of a challenge because Alex's character is very simplistic. Now, that can be misleading because you might think simple means easy to draw, but that's not always the case. If you look at like Calvin and Hobbes or the Peanuts or anything, because they're so simple, if you change it too much, it's just not going to look like the character. It's not like a comic book character where if you remove a line here, a line there, it could still resemble that character. So it's kind of a fine line. So it's a lot harder than you might think. Now, in addition to the cartoon version, Alex also wanted me to do a stylized version of himself because this is a tour and this is going to be him on stage. So he wanted something to represent not only the cartoon version based on the stories that he tells in his video, but he wanted to show that this is a live thing, this is him in person. But he didn't want to use photographs or whatever, so he wanted me to do kind of my version of what he looks like. So moving on from this point, I am going to call the cartoon version, and the other version, the one that's a little more realistic, the real Alex, even that version is a bit more of a caricature. Another design element that Alex was really adamant about incorporating was the microphone, just to further drive home the point that this is a stand-up tour. To start off, I did a number of concept sketches in a program called Clip Studio Paint. It's formerly called Manga Studio. It's usually used for making comics, and I am primarily a comic book artist. But I find that this program has the best engine for drawing and inking. So this is always my go-to if I'm doing digital. Sometimes I'll do physical sketches in my sketchbook, but for this, I just decided I'm going to try to do almost all of it digitally. The earlier concepts featured the two Alexes sort of entangled in the microphone cord, and also in the beginning I was trying to use the globe to sort of just give that impression of, you know, that kind of globe-trotting world tour type vibe, even though this was more of a national tour, but that kind of sums it up with that, you know, that big world, which kind of that we later abandoned in order to go a different direction. But in the beginning, you just try different things out and see kind of what works. I think there were some good elements in these early sketches, but in the end, I think Alex felt like it came across that the cartoon Alex was tying up the real Alex, or that, you know, they were in some sort of peril, and ultimately this is supposed to be a fun comedy show. The direction we ended up landing on was to have the real Alex doing his stand-up, and the cartoon Alex is sort of down below trying to plug in the microphone like it came unplugged, but he got a little entangled in the cord and everything, and we played around with a few different things, and we decided to make sure sure that the cartoon version of Alex was smiling, just to show that he wasn't in danger and that this was sort of more kind of the antics you might find in one of Alex's videos. Moving on, I started sketching what would be the final design. Also, we decided we wanted to have some sort of floating icons in the background that were sort of representative of some of the stories that Alex would be telling on stage. Now, I don't like to limit myself to one particular software. I like to use whatever is best for each stage of the project. So after I'm done sketching in Clip Studio, I import everything into Adobe Illustrator because I like that super tight vector line work look that I can get in Adobe Illustrator. Now, sometimes I'll do my line work by hand with a brush and ink, or maybe I might do it digitally in Clip Studio, and that's particularly what I would use if I'm doing like a comic book. But Alex really liked the look of some of the prints that he saw in my online store, and most of those were done primarily in Adobe Illustrator. My Illustrator process is just go over my sketch in a different layer with the pen tool. Now, the pen tool if you're not used to it, it's very different than traditional drawing. It's not as intuitive. Basically what you're doing is you're creating these curves and you're pulling these curves, and it's just very counterintuitive to what you might think drawing should be like. But when you get used to it, I mean, it's really amazing, and you can do really tight, really nice line work with it. I start by drawing an outline around the image with about a 2.5 or 3 point line thickness, and then on a separate layer I'll go with a 1.5 to a 2 point line thickness, and I'll fill in all the inside details. At this point, all the lines are going to have a uniform thickness, but I want those interior lines to have a varied line weight and sort of be tapered. To achieve this, I use the width tool that allows me to pinch and stretch the line, and what that does is that gives it a kind of a varied line weight, almost like you would see with a brush, only it's a lot tighter in Illustrator. Once I have all my outlines done, I create a separate layer under the line art, and that's going to be where I do my coloring. Now, I used to import all this into Photoshop and do all my coloring in Photoshop, but that was before I discovered the blob tool in Illustrator, which is just an amazing tool for coloring. So what I do is I start off by doing all my flat colors. I'll fill in all the solid colors, and then I'll go and I'll pick a slightly darker version of that color and a slightly lighter version of that color, and that's going to act as my highlights and also my shadows. Now, what a lot of people do is they'll use black for their shadows and white for their highlights, and they'll put them on a different layer, and they'll just kind of put an effects layer and adjust that. But to me, that kind of, it muddies it up. It just doesn't look right. So I always like to just go into the color picker and choose a slightly darker or lighter color, and then use that for my highlights and my shadows. After that's done, I import my artwork into yet another software program. This time I'm going to bring everything into Adobe Photoshop, where I'm going to add my finishing touches and kind of some effects and things like that. Now, on a piece like this, I don't really like solid black outlines. If I'm working on a comic, then I do. I mean, that's kind of what I prefer. I love black and white stuff for comics. But for this, I like to do what are called color holds. And basically what this is it's basically where you fill in all the outlines with yet another darker version of that color. You'll see this a lot in like a lot of Disney animated stuff, or just like the promotional stuff. If you look at the characters, you'll know that they have sort of a darker color outline. It's usually not like a solid black. In order to accomplish this look, I lock my line art layer in Photoshop, and what that's going to do, that's going to allow me just to draw right over the line, and the only thing that's going to fill in is that line, and I can go through and I can add those darker colors around, around the artwork. Now, we're almost done, but since we're in Photoshop, I want to add some finishing touches that are a little more difficult to accomplish in Illustrator. So what I like to do is I add some, textured effects, some weathering and things like that. But usually, personally, I only do those sort of in the background, because what I want is those foreground elements to sort of pop off the page. So you'll see the two Alex characters, they're not going to have that texture around them. So I'm also going to create just a slight shadow behind them. I also like to go around those main images with sort of a white outline. Like I compare that to in the old days, back in the 80s when I was growing up, or they have these now, but you'll have the stickers with kind of the white outlines, and I kind of like that. I like how that pops everything off. So that's just something that I like to incorporate in most of my designs. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the process that I use to create poster art. And there you have it. That is how this tour poster came together. And I want to thank Alex for sort of trusting me with his, his creations and let me kind of do my own interpretation on them. Check him out at It's Alex Clark on YouTube. And yeah, that's all I got to say. So I will see you guys later. And that is all. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Also, you can follow me at Serkworks on social media. Do you like making comics? Then go to Serkworks.com and pick up the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's packed full of fonts, brushes, templates, and more. And best of all, it's totally free.